Are there specific politicians right now that you see as kind of implementing this strategy?
The effective strategy or the squishy strategy?
Both. Both.
So I actually I like
this is a real conversation held by two adults, both at the top of their fields. This is it. This is the level of conservative discourse we have to look forward to. It's yes. So where exactly would you place them exactly on the squishy paradigm? Like, did you have a graph of squish? Do we know exactly at what percentage of squish someone truly becomes squishy? Eating kids is not a vibe. I'll agree with that. I don't think that's an offensive statement in any way, shape, or form. Hey everybody, sorry for the wait. I had to take Chico out for a little pee, but he has now been drained, so his bladder is empty. But now it's time for a different kind of golden shower, of course, and that's going to be one of the conservative variety. So let's enjoy this whole experience. It's going to be great. Yeah. This is a long clip, so I'm going to speed it up a little bit. I'm sure they won't mind.
Lauren here. Let's speak with the Daily Wire's Michael Knowles about his exciting new book, Speechless, that talks about the sinister history of the modern left. But before we do, I want to say a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Noble Gold. So inflation is a thing of the past, right? That's not something
This goes over the history of PC culture and censorship. Is the conservative answer.
we don't know what political correctness is. I think political correctness is very simple. It is a purely negative campaign to destroy traditional standards in our traditional society. That's all it is. And very intelligent leftist theorists developed it over about 100 years, but that's what it comes down to. People sometimes talk about critical race theory or critical...
Oh my God. He bought a spinning table for his book so that it would spin in circles while he's selling it, while he's plugging it. Oh, thank you. Thank you. That will add some much needed brevity to what I'm sure is another otherwise horrifying segment.
Theory, they say, it sounds so complicated. It's really not complicated. The theory is to criticize. That's the whole thing. So the left wants to destroy the traditional standards and way of life. And conservatives react.
It's just like the shopping channel. Fantastic. Well, I mean, now I'm more intrigued. I wasn't totally sold on the book, but now that it's spinning in concentric circles, I'm like, interesting.
Generally in one of two ways. You got the squishy types who just cave. They totally give in. They call Bruce Jenner a she. They go along with whatever new jargon the left wants to use, right? So
that makes you squishy? Holy shit. Well, yeah. Color me squishy. I'm all kinds of squishy. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that'll play well.
Yeah, the Mitt Romney approach, if you will, right?
I wasn't going to name names, but yes, you're right.
Name names.
You won't mince words.
You see, Mitt Romney, he won't dead name trans women. He won't misgender trans women, and that makes him a soy boy squish. You know, he's a squishy soy boy. That's shame on him. Obviously, he doesn't have anything other. He doesn't have, you know, the spine to be able to hold himself up. So he's squishy.
So yes, that's the kind of squishy Romney type approach. Then there's the other approach, the more stalwart, obstinate approach, which more of the rock-ribbed conservatives have leaned into. But they fall for a trap as well. They will say, I'm not going to go along with the new left-wing standard. I'm not going to go along with standards at all. I'm a free speech absolutist. I think you ought to be able to say and do whatever you want. I don't think you should ever be canceled. Now, I don't care if you show up to the water cooler wearing a swastika screaming Zig Heil. You can't lose your job because I'm against cancel culture, or whatever they say. That strategy, though I suppose I prefer the more stalwart people to the squishes, that strategy also gives the left what it wants because they abandon the traditional standards. So regardless of how you react, nobody is left defending those traditional standards. And because nature abhors a vacuum, the left is going to come in and impose their new rules, their new speech codes, their new way of life on society. Either way.
Oh yeah, she's Canadian as well. Just another wonderful export in our ever-ending, playing cards. Your Steven Crowders, your Jordan Petersons, your Lauren Southerns, your Lauren Chens. They're all Stefan Molyneux. They're all Canadian. All of them. Don't know what Canada's doing, I mean, I'd like to think that a handful of us are also pushing back. You got your Serfs, you got Thought Slime, you got Mexi. There's a handful of re-education, they're all trying to push back against the conservative narrative, but oof. Yeah, it's rough out there.
React to it.
Right, and I think what we're increasingly
not sending our best.
Is that, these cephalopod conservatives, if you will, no spine, they're kind of moving more and more into a version of conservatism that is actually libertarianism.
Ted Cruz.
And I firmly believe the right to use whatever tools we have at our disposal to fight back against the left. But I mean, we have people like David French saying, no, it's actually the conservative position to not ban critical race theory in schools,
Hey,
i.e.
Mr. Brain
to
Dead,
allow
think
it
as well.
to keep being taught. And it's just, are there specific politicians right now that you see as kind of implementing this strategy?
The effective strategy or the squishy strategy?
Both. Both.
So I actually, I like
this is a real conversation held by two adults, both at the top of their fields. This is it. This is the level of conservative discourse we have to look forward to. It's yes. So where exactly would you place them exactly on the squishy paradigm? Like, did you have a graph of squish? Do we know exactly at what percentage of squish someone truly becomes squishy? Is there a way to quantify the squish? Can we figure that out? Is there a ratio? Does someone de-squish? How does one de-squish exactly? And at what point are they less squishy and more soft? Do they become firm? Do we know when a leftist or a conservative becomes a little bit more firm? And can we quantify that as well? I have so many questions. So many questions.
I'll answer it by getting to your point on David French. I was going to try to be nice. I was going to try to not name names, but you know, David's a big boy and he's made these claims. And one of the claims he's made is very famously or infamously is that drag queen story.
Blessing of liberty.
It's a blessing of liberty. I mean, I can hear James Madison turning in his grave at that very suggestion. But it's not just David who's made this argument. There are many other people, and maybe they just came to this crazy idea honestly, but it's still wrong. What they say is secular liberalism is a totally neutral playing ground, and it's totally a fair fight between the radicals and the conservatives. And if we tell these perverts that they can't twerk for toddlers at the public library, why, they might tell us that we can't go to church on Sunday. And my answer to that is always, first of all, they're already telling us we can't go to church on Sunday. They shut down the churches here for a year in a lot of places. And up in Canada, I mean, it's like the Gestapo. I mean,
you can be arrested. Oh yeah, they have arrested pastors.
They've arrested prominent pastors, so they're already doing it. But even so, are you really telling me that people do not possess the faculties of reason and the moral judgment to distinguish between drag queen story hour and going to church? Are you telling me that it is not legitimate for us to discern between perverts twerking their bodies in front of 2-year-olds and a pastor exegeting the Bible? If that is the case, and I understand that there are a number of people who believe that, that's fine. I understand your point, but then you have to admit that self-government is not possible.
So, yeah, I know this is part of the fear-mongering of the right and has been for a while, but what exactly is going on with this idea that there's just a whole bunch of drag queen shows for children in which they're just twerking in front of the kids? It's like, yeah. Or what are you taking your kids to? Well, I don't know. We have a couple activities planned. There's going to be some face painting. Yeah, that's probably happening around 4. We're going to take them to soccer. Soccer, that'll be fun. You know, get them some exercise, some socialization. And then comes the drag queen story hour with the twerking. Yeah, no, we really like that one too. It's good. They'll get some stories in, and then you know, right after some pleasantries, little Dr. Seuss, they then bend over and start twerking for the kids. The kids love it. You know, it's obviously inappropriate for them to be throwing real money, but we give them Monopoly money, and they make it rain in their own fashion. It's truly something to behold, and so saith the left. This is the future we want. This is what we've been fighting for.
Self-government relies on the idea that we have faculties of reason. We actually can think our way through the world.
And by the way, every single time conservatives try to conflate drag queens with trans people, that is not true. That is just factually incorrect. Stop them, or at least push back on it. You can be like, those are not the same thing. A drag queen is not someone who's trans. Most likely they are cis. It's often a performance. That's what it is.
We have moral judgment. We can discern, not perfectly, but pretty well, between good and bad. And when we decide that certain things are true and certain things are right and certain things are good, then we encourage those things through our politics, and we discourage things that are false and wicked and wrong. So I think that's the third option. You got the two trick options, right? The squishy one and the no standards one. But I think there's this third option, which is what conservatives used to do, namely articulate a substantive moral vision of politics, defend actual standards, say, some things are good, some things are wrong. We're going to encourage the former and discourage the latter, and actually stand for something. Because I think the plain fact is that freedom of speech in the abstract means absolutely nothing for people who have nothing to say.
And that's interesting because I recently interviewed Michael Malice. Love him too. He is also just a fiery one. Got to watch who I'm having on. I'm increasingly upsetting the YouTube gods, I think. But he is so fed up with the left. He is so done. He's pushing the.
That's why you shouldn't have people like Michael Malice on. Because you might get censored on YouTube. That's the only reason you shouldn't have conversations with Michael Malice.
Idea of a national divorce with the things you've just outlined, conservatives actually trying to stick by their principles instead of just caving in or going full on libertarian. Do you think there is a chance of a conservative revival or any type of reconciliation with the left right now?
I do. I do not advocate a national divorce.
Could you imagine someone like even 10 years ago sending them like this clip, be like, "Oh yeah, this is basically the conversation of the future. This is what we talk about." And then watching it and then be like the squishy lulbitarians, like half the words, they'd be like, "What does this all mean?" Oh, it's cutting edge.
Course, I advocate a national takeover. I advocate recovering in our culture, that which the left kind of foisted on us for the past century. I also don't want a national divorce because it would be ugly and violent. And I think that people are not taking that seriously enough. War is a very ugly thing. And I don't think we should be so flippant about calling for these things. I think there are plenty of tools at our disposal. And the great hope is this. I believe that the American people still possess common sense. I don't think who have appointed themselves to run our lives
you don't think
possess common sense. But I think even if you just look at public opinion surveys, the priorities of the American people are very different from those of the mediocrities who are ruling us. If you look on issues of immigration, the majority of Americans want to limit immigration, legal and illegal. We're simply taking in too many people. We're not assimilating them. It's creating a lot of social problems. How come all of the elite people in the Democratic Party and most of them in the Republican Party want effectively open borders, but the majority of Americans want to drastically reduce immigration? There's obviously some gap there. This is true, I think, on issues like Drag Queen Story Hour. It's obviously true on the free speech tradition in America. The theorists who gave us political correctness, I'm thinking of, in particular, of one guy.
Foucault?
Not Foucault. He was a mess as well. But this is actually further back than Foucault.
He was degenerate.
Antonio Gramsci. An Italian. I hate that the Italians foisted this on us. But this one Italian communist pointed out.
Okay, before we go into his communism understanding, Drag Queen Story Hour, Drag Queen Story Time is a children event that first started in 2015 by author and activist Michelle Teen in San Francisco, with the goal is to inspire love of reading while teaching deeper lessons on diversity, self-love, and the appreciation of others. The events, usually geared for children aged 3 to 11, are hosted by drag queens who read children's books and engage in learning activities in public libraries. Okay. Where's the twerking part? All right. So expose, nothing. Nudity, nothing. Twerk, nothing. Twerking, nothing. Interesting. According to Think Progress, it has been a common tactic of the far right to disrupt the Drag Queen Story Hour. Two members of the white nationalist group American Identity Movement, formerly Europa, dressed as clowns and disrupted one of them. Ooh, so this is who we're associating with. In June 2019, the Southern Poverty Law Center reported the white nationalist and former U.S. congressional candidate Paul Nelhan announced a June 19 plan he called Project Dox Teesler Storytime. Nelhan urged followers to gather photos and vehicle license plates of participants to dox them, revealing private or identifying information about the individual. They reported the events were a big draw for far-right extremists. So it seems like yet another case, and this seems to always be the case, where in this particular instance, it's the far right who are antagonizing members of the queer community. And people on the other end are the ones getting blamed for it. I don't know, Christian protesters that showed up at our local story hour filled out the audience nicely for the news cameras reporting on the attendance, swing and roundabouts. Well, yeah, until they start like dropping T-slurs, then it's not great. Michael Knowles single-handedly made me racist against Italians. That's horrifying. That's horrifying. And again, you need to. There's too much of that going around. I said this before. Do you know the amount of Fredophobia that came out after that soccer game? Like the amount of comments and pictures and memes I saw on the like. I saw people posting a book called "Are Italians White?" ? How dare you? How dare all of you? That's disgusting. This racism has to stop. All of you. Shame.
That the radicals' revolutions fail because they...
Oi, bruv, you call it subtle, bruv. I mean... Blubbity bobbity. I apologize. Football. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You know, I don't think it's anything more in the football. And then, yeah, I apologize. I deeply apologize. Actually, our queen and kings were more than prepared. Kind of comes with the territory when you're queer in the Bible Belt. Fuck, I can't imagine, Tail. That's got to be brutal.
They don't possess cultural hegemony, and they don't possess the common sense. No revolution can totally succeed if it's divorced from the common sense. You know, this is why when the radical leftists purport to speak for the allegedly oppressed masses, you'll notice that the allegedly oppressed people generally don't care about the leftists' theories. They actually like their communities and their people and their way of life and their country. So I think there is a great deal of hope. What conservatives need to do, though, is grow a spine. They need courage. They need to ditch this ridiculous, ahistorical, as you call it, lolbertarianism, that basically says that it's illegitimate to engage in the political process or to coerce anything out of anybody. I mean, this kind of idea has no grounding in American history. The founding fathers would have laughed at it. They may have cried at this stupid idea. I think we need to get courage and be willing to offer a substantive vision of politics and, most importantly, enforce it.
And I guess like getting into the nitty gritty, because I'm all about action lately. I'm sure you feel the same way watching 2020 happen, and just the lack of spine, lack of adherence to the goals of their office. Politician after politician, even Republicans, just caved essentially to the left's agenda. What can practically be done right now? We've seen
just cave to the left's agenda. What are any of you putting forward? I have seen like barely any policy outside of vilifying trans people. That's like the most prominent thing y'all have been putting to the table. But it's not as if you're like, here's how we can improve society. It's more like, here how we make marginalized communities feel shit. That's going to be our policy going forward.
Republicans start to take steps with CRT. I think that is a measurable thing to get the culture back from the left. Are there any other agendas or policies that you're looking at right now that you think, yes, this is exactly what
we have to get our culture back, everyone. What have we done? What hath we done?
Talking about this is how conservatives get off of playing defense and actually go on the offense to reclaim the country.
Yes, two ideas. One is on CRT, and I think we actually need to go further with this. There have been the squishes who say, well, it's fine to have critical race theory. It just shouldn't be mandated, but it should be open and we can expand the curriculum. You can.
It's so wild how intense they are about cancel culture when it comes to things they don't like. When it comes to critical race theory, which, by the way, is not being taught. It's not being taught in elementary school. Where did any of this come from? Like, do you think kids are going to be able to wrap their heads around something like adults, grown adults can't do it? You know, what exactly are they expecting children to do?
Not expand a curriculum. There are only so many weeks in the semester, only so many hours in the day. Every minute of your life that you squander reading Trash by Kimberly Crenshaw or Ibram of your life that you will not spend reading something worthwhile. Education is intrinsically coercive. There is no difference between education and indoctrination. The words mean the same thing. We are going to teach students certain things. This canard that we should teach students how to think, not what to think, is a preposterous false dichotomy. In order to know how to think, you need to know certain things, and that involves teaching students what to think in some way. So I'm glad they're doing that. We need to do it more so. We need to ditch the defense of so-called academic freedom. It's a joke. Conservatives used to know that. William F. Buckley Jr. launched the modern conservative movement by making fun of the idea of academic freedom. He had a book called God and Man at Yale, subtitled The Superstitions of Academic Freedom. He called it a hoax. Great. Take care of that. Get that out of the schools. Just ban it, censor it, cancel it, for that matter. The second part, though, is related. What's another area of speech that I think we need to clamp down on in order to actually free speech? Obscenity would be a good example. As recently as a dozen years ago, in the United States, we jailed a pornographer, threw him in federal prison for almost 4 years for obscenity. Not for child porn, not for sexual assault, just for putting out smut. This is a good thing. There is no First Amendment right to pornography. Thomas Jefferson did not believe that you had the right to look at some creepy stuff on the internet. This is very important. Now, the squishes will say that and I notice, by the way, it's mostly boomer lolbertarian types. It's the younger conservatives are actually pretty serious about this. And
right, because we see how ineffectual
there's a lot of wonderful new neologisms going on. This has just been like an all-you-can-eat buffet.
the older generations were, and we want to try something different.
Yes, and the younger generations, by the way, know the effect of having porn. I mean, it's for generations.
The silver line is they're eating their own. HRT is more often prescribed to women trying to get pregnant than anyone else who's trans. I've watched state Senate hearings get shut down by the local bishop for anti-trans bills that ended up threatening married women. Well, here's the rub though. Unfortunately, they're going to be fine. Like, you know, all the drugs that are used to also help out trans women or trans kids, for example, are also used on cis people for a variety of reasons. And those are going to stay completely fine. They're not going to limit their freedoms. They're just going after marginalized people because that's what they do. Like I said, they don't have actual policy. That's the most fucked up thing about Republicans, Like, at least liberals have policy. A lot of it is to uphold, yes, neoliberalism and basically understanding how we can limit the amount that we suppress free markets, how we can aid in the development of geopolitical interests in America abroad, things of this nature. But they do help. They do help on local levels, domestic levels. Whereas conservatives, it's all just, we're going to invent a boogeyman. We're now going to take that boogeyman and we're going to get you real afraid of them, real scared. And then when you're really terrified, we'll propose something that doesn't actually benefit you. Like, that's the most fucked up thing about all this. This isn't going to benefit cis people. Like, they're not making their lives safer. They're not protecting kids. Like the giant fear at the end of the day where everyone's so afraid of, say, trans women coming into cis women's bathrooms, and that's going to cause huge amounts of like abuse and stuff like that. Again, if you look at the stats, it's cis men who are committing the majority of sexual assault. In fact, trans people disproportionately have way more higher cases of assault committed upon them. So if you do all these bans, if you're going to do all these horrible things, you're not helping yourselves out. You're actually making things decidedly worse. Because on top of which, you're vilifying marginalized communities who, I'm sorry to say, you might have a couple in your family, statistically. You might have to hide that great shame. I happen to have, like, a trans son, for example, or something to that effect. And it sucks, but I have to vilify him in his life to uphold this ridiculous status quo that we're trying to do. Because again, we don't have any fucking policy. Like, they don't. That's, what else are they offering? What are we going to get? Are they going to lower taxes on corporations? Cool. Are they going to lower taxes on how much rich people have to pay? Cool. Awesome. Well, that works out. Trickle down has been working out so great for generations. Let's keep it up.
Generation Z, they've had porn since they've been conscious, right? They've had devices in their hands since they were 4 years old. And so they recognize how insidious this sort of thing is. The difference, I think, gets to two views of liberty. There is the modern liberal view. You might also call this kind of like the boomer view or the libertarian view. That's the idea that liberty is the ability to do whatever you want. Then there is the conservative view of liberty, which the founding fathers shared and which every serious person throughout history has shared. Namely, liberty is not the ability to do whatever you want. It is the right to do what you ought to do. You do not, liberty, through liberal education, for instance, is the training in virtue, in the training of your habits and the tamping down of base passions. So you think, okay, according to the modern lib view of liberty, the heroin addict is the freest person on earth. Right? As long as he's got a couple bucks in his pocket, he can shoot up. Oh my gosh, isn't he so free? He's so liberated. No, he's obviously a slave. He's the least free person ever because he's a slave to his base passions. The truly liberated person who has liberty is one who has cultivated his virtues and has not fallen into these vices.
So I have the feeling that.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we're kind of all over the map here. Is he implying, by the way, he didn't, am I perhaps stretching? Am I doing a branch too far? But is he implying the same thing about pornography? Like, if you're a coomer and you're giving into your base desires, if you're like, I'm gonna pull the old vibrator out and pleasure the vagine right now, does that make you in turn giving into your base desires? Are you uncontrollable? Are you a slave? Are you a slave to the coom? Is that a crime?
When it comes to this whole discussion of liberty, and I love liberty, I like freedom, but I feel like more and more conservatives are starting to take the libertarian approach where they define liberty as the end goal, the ultimate good. Whereas I don't know about you, but I see it more as an ends to a mean. Liberty is valuable insofar as we use it to achieve a just, virtuous society, which is not the same as saying that as long as you're free to do something, it's automatically a moral good, which I feel even...
Probably not. He's come out against porn. Yeah, that's entirely my point. He's come out frequently against porn. That they all have. So again, is that them just saying you're giving into your base desires? How dare you? How dare you pleasure your vagine?
Among conservative circles is the argument we're hearing.
Coincidentally, Lauren, your view happens to be the same view as that of James Madison, the father of the Constitution, who writes in the Federalist, he says, justice is the end of government. It will be pursued unless liberty be lost in the process. When you actually go back to that infamous phrase from David French, where he's quoting the Constitution, we are establishing this government, they write, to give to our people the blessings of liberty. Liberty there is instrumental. It is to an end. And I think, moreover, The key is to recognize that liberty and licentiousness are not the same thing. The founding fathers didn't think they were the same thing. No one thought they was the same thing until about 5 minutes ago. Actually, they're opposites. If you have a licentious society, you will not have a free society. If you have a free society, you will have to tamp down on licentiousness. John Adams said this. I don't mean to be a scold or a prude. I don't think I'm either a scold or a prude. I'm just telling you, as a fallen man who's lived and been around the block a little bit, one has a greater life. One.
Tell me, Michael, how far have you fallen? I want to hear some stories. What's been going down? What you been doing in your free time?
Is able to flourish more when one tamps down vice. It's just a fact. John Adams said that the Constitution is built for a moral and religious people. He wasn't being a scold or a prude either. He was just making a descriptive statement. He was stating a fact about the world. The less we understand true liberty, the more we give into licentiousness and this anything goes nonsense, the less free we will be, the less capable of self-government, and the more in need we will be of a ruler, which is what we're seeing day in and day out, whether it's the Dr. Fauci's of the world.
Holy shit. All of them just want like a monarchist daddy. I want my little king daddy. I need king daddy to rule over me. It's going to be wild. Then you can stop my licentiousness.
Or some other benevolent better who appoints himself to run our life.
Right, and it is just terrifying to watch how the
Aimbot.
everyday lives, especially people who are in our generation, are increasingly giving in to essentially any base desire that they want. It's almost as if any attempt to say, hey, you should control your urges is now seen as restrictive and authoritarian, even though this is coming from the people who literally want you to have vaccine passports. Bit of a double standard there, but
we should gin up our based passions, don't you think?
Yes.
And that means cultivating virtue and pursuing the good.
I love it. So, Michael, where can people find you, keep up with what you're doing, and where can people find your book?
So most importantly, you can get the book at speechlessbook.com.
No, I shan't be buying that, Michael. What a strange man. What a strange man you are. What a bizarre. I hope this spins enough times to get you a couple more sales. Is he gonna have to do the Dave Rubin thing where he buys like 10,000 copies of his book and then says like no one's burning them, so then he starts burning them? Like, I think Dave Rubin was the only person who burnt Dave Rubin's book. So, you know, there's that.
Hey, do you like movies? Do you like Serfs? Do you want movies and Serfs watching the movies? So then come over to the new channels. It's the Serfs Cinema. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Can you do the thing, you know, that thumbs up and comment and all those things that help us out in the algorithm that controls every aspect of our lives? Also, if you happen to have a Facebook account, can you delete it? Like, just delete it. You should probably delete your Facebook account because it's not a great company. But hey, if you can't do that for whatever reason, I understand. And could you also go to facebook.com/thesurftimes then and give us a little like and a follow. We're just trying to push back against the fact that people like Ben Shapiro happen to dominate the platform entirely. And when everyone asks why do older generations believe the things they believe, one of the problems is the majority of them on social media use Facebook. So to counter that, we're just going to be on there too now. Also, if you happen to have a union or a worker co-op or even a leftist project, podcast, website, Zoom, MySpace, it doesn't matter. We will advertise it for free on this channel. All you got to do is go to weareserfs.com and use the forms that we got there, weareserfs.com. Thanks, everybody.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and VK Jehannam, we are prepared to commit human sacrifices for your eternal glory. To our monarchs, the Tim Caucus and Tom Spiker, we are humbled to be your oafish jesters, clowning around in your royal court. To our lords, Evan Nudie, Tofox, Ryan Lubin, Trevor R., Jeff Lamb, and Alexander Thaler, we shall proudly carry your standard onto the battlefield and die for your precious land. To our esteemed Knights of the Round Table, Dark Puppy, Jenna Towell, Anna Loves Riley, Quiet 185, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, Multimondi, Trevor Janis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojak, Saren 42, Chronic to Hemphog, The Great Pudini, Bongini, Catherine, Radical Maniac, Ramona Costa, J. Fraser Cartwright, Jimmy Bignuts, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Yopi, Josh Mickelson, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our glass, we raise our swords, and we salute you.